Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to go over the Zion Oil and Gas Annual Shareholder Meeting recap from June 7th, 2023. This was a 2-hour long annual shareholder meeting. I stayed through from the very beginning all the way to the end. So with that being said, guys, if you're appreciative of that, I want you to know that I took a ton of notes and just tried to condense everything down that would happen from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And so with that being said, if you don't mind, please hit the like button, share the video, leave me a comment. I don't even care if it's a negative comment, just leave me a comment. I'll approve it for the algorithm. So if you don't believe me, take a look here at all the notes that I did take. As you can see here, 4.5 pages of notes from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So like I said, smash the like button and share the video to help get the algorithm up. And real quick, guys, before we get into the details, I actually made a video before the annual shareholder meeting right when the market opened, as I wanted to compare the stock price action prior to the meeting, and then we're going to take a look at it now after the meeting at about noon to 12:30 to see how the market's reacting to the annual shareholder meeting. All right, guys, this is actually pre-annual shareholder meeting here. And we have to redraw the fib level. Of course, we updated. 20 cents is now going to be our tip-top ceiling here. 4.5 still, obviously, the floor. So currently, like I called out, the last couple of videos of talking about ZNOG is that we did, break below that support level, and we are going to probably retest at 5.5. However, be interesting to see if we actually test it as the meeting starts, and then maybe recover after, or it's going to hold tight right here, and then as these people start talking, then that could potentially obviously help or hurt the stock. So anyway, we'll check back in, and after the meeting is started, after we get the information, and then we'll kind of see how the market reacted to the meeting itself. All right, guys, and we're back on track. So thanks for bearing with me through that first 1.5 to 2 minute rant. So let's go ahead and take a look at how things went down. So at 9 a.m., I'm not going to lie, right off the bat, I had some PTSD from last year's meeting. I was actually a little nervous, and I don't know why. It was, I guess, from last year watching, and honestly not even really being able to watch. I was in the middle of something last year, and I remember just watching the stock price just tank, and I was like, whoa, what happened? I had to go back and rewatch it, and so I just kind of had like a sick feeling in my stomach before it started. So what happened, Rob Dunn came out, CEO, called the meeting to order, led everyone in prayer. Then Bill Avery came up and read the forward-looking statement for legal purposes. It's the same forward-looking statement that you typically hear on their annual shareholder meeting, or whenever they do a podcast, they have to legally come out and say something about that. John Brown then comes up, praises the team, asks for prayers, and of course asks for more money. Of course, we knew that was kind of coming. Rob Dunn then calls the meeting to order, goes over the rules of the meeting, and then the secretary of the meeting goes over the common stock, and then discusses all 5 proxy votes presented for approval or non-approval. If you're a shareholder, you should have gotten something in the mail, something through your brokerage firm, something in the form of email to where you could have voted on these. If you did not vote, they actually left the voting open and gave about 15 to 20 minute window for people to go and call in or go back online and place their votes on the 5 proxies that we're about to discuss and go over the results of. So the proxy votes were as follows. So proxy 1 was to approve 4 class 3 directors, and that was Robert Dunn, Virginia Proden. One guy, I did not catch the name actually of that director. The audio was kind of in and out, honestly, throughout the meeting. So there were some things that I may have missed. So if someone knows that other person, please let me know. And then Paul Orion, they all got approved regardless of who it was. They did get approved as class 3 director. The next one was basically the same thing you vote on, I think, every year since I've been invested in the company, was the accounting firm for the company. We approved that as well. Non-binding advisory votes for compensation. I think this has to do with being able to pay the directors compensation through the form of shares, if I'm not mistaken. And then the fourth one, guys, I missed. I'm not exactly sure what the fourth proxy vote was. So again, if you know what that one was, regardless of whatever it was not approved, which is kind of weird because it got a pretty decent percentage. I think maybe 79 to 80%. However, the way that it was formatted, it wasn't the full majority. It had to be a certain percentage to get approved. And then the more outstanding shares issued from 8 million to 1.2 billion was approved. And that, of course, means more dilution for the shareholders. But they're doing that in, anticipation for them to possibly raise more money through, buying and selling of more shares. So that was approved. So 4 out of the 5 proxies were indeed approved. Okay, on to the geological report. So Rob Dunn came up and discussed MJO2, how it was not commercially viable, and then talks about Zion, their ability to get the results from MJO1, how they feel real confident about their re-entry plan and things of that nature. Before we get into what Lee Russell said, let's go over what basically makes a well commercially viable to begin with. So a commercial well is any oil or gas drilling site that produces enough oil or gas to be commercially viable. All wells that investors are willing to put money into are considered to be commercial wells. Sites with a non-producing well falls outside the category, as do sites with 1 or 2 wells, unless their production is extremely high or on a consistent basis. So basically, to make this commercially viable, what's going to have to happen is basically the ability for a business, product, or service to compete effectively and to make a profit. So basically, if the well can produce enough barrels of oil per day to make it profitable and basically outperform the cost of operating that well. Okay, that's what basically a commercially viable well is. Okay, back to the geological report. Lee Russell, the VP of Geological and Physics, gives the geological report. He begins with the MJ1 overview with mud logs which show gas in the 4,750 to 5,030 meter range in the MJ01. They actually showed pictures of these logs. This annual shareholder meeting, guys, is going to be posted on the Zion Oil and Gas website. If it's not already, it will, probably within the next day or two. And they recorded the entire meeting. So if you want to go back and see those logs, if you want to hear every single thing that they said, that's what you need to do, is go back and watch that. Of course, this is just for someone who wants this condensed in about the 10 to 20 minute time frame. They go over some events from 2018 regarding the MJ01, including trip gas well pressure surging, which basically said that the well was trying to kind of flow on its own, which I thought was pretty interesting, and then light oil to the surface. And then they showed that why it was unsuccessful due to formation damage, lack of penetration beyond the damage, and perforating guns. So they basically tried to go in and perforate, but they didn't have the technology, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to actually go and make it effective and bring the oil to surface and flow naturally on its own. More information from the geological report. They said, why enter the MJ01? That was the big question everyone was wondering, like, well, you said it wasn't commercially viable, so why in the world would you go back to it? As they stated, they learned a lot from the MJ02, went back and reevaluated the MJ01. They had a petrophysical consultant come out, and he says that they have 3 zones with much potential if they can overcome the formative damage. That's the one thing there, is you don't know if it's going to be successful in an exploration company, as they stated many times to us that there's never any guarantee that they're going to be successful. They're going to go out there and try, but we just don't know if it's going to fully be successful or not. Rob Dunn then says that with the new technology that they have, they should be able to overcome the damage. He states that they did not have this technology 5 to 10 years ago, which is, again, answers another question that we had of why in the world are you doing it now? Why didn't you do it then? On to Monty Ness, the VP of Operations. He comes out and explains why the MJ2 was unsuccessful. We kind of know about all that through the PR and their updates of when they came out and talked about, why it was not successful. He talks about how they knew that they would face challenges, and then he kind of answers the question I was thinking of, well, why in the world would you go out there and do it if you knew this was coming? And he thought that they could overcome and have the well flow. And then he gives an example of a Coca-Cola can, and it's just kind of a really good example of, it kind of compares it to the well and he had a picture of a Coke or a Diet Coke. And if you have a brand new Coke can, you know there's Coke in it. However, you don't see anything coming out of it. When you open the can, it's still sitting there. There's nothing coming out or flowing out. So then what can you do? Well, you take a straw, you put her in there, nothing's coming out. What can you do? And basically suck it out to make it flow out, sort of like siphoning, gas out of a tank. Then it's kind of like special measures to get that liquid from the bottom to flow out to go to a new location. Well, then basically, if you take that same Coke can that's not open and you shake it up and then you open it, obviously it's going to come out and flow naturally on its own. So that's basically what they were trying to do with the MgO2 with preparation and stimulation and nitrogen and all that type of stuff, was trying to get that to come out of the well by using that technology. They seem to think that the MgO1, they're going to be able to do that, and that new technology is going to work better in the MgO1 side as it did for as opposed to the MgO2. Then he goes over all the progress made since the annual shareholder meeting from June 8th, 2022. I'm not going to go over all of that because that's something that you should already know if you have been keeping up with the company, and then you could again go back and watch the video that they've recorded from the actual meeting, or just browse their website. You could read on that. It then talks about the MgO1 re-entry plan, which includes meetings with service providers, many of which have already happened, inventory replenishment, which he said that this is actually getting a lot better, kind of dying down from all the logistical issues they had from COVID, and then mentions that the MgO1 rock properties are actually more favorable to be, to potentially have more flow better than the MgO2. Next up was Jeff Moskowitz, and he talked about the state of Israel affairs. As most of you know, the Israeli government has been through so many different structures and elections. They had been through five elections and over a certain period of time, and it's caused the license approval to slow down. The former administration, of course, was not very fond of fossil fuels and wanted to push green energy, renewable energy, all that type of stuff. Well, then now they formed a new government. Netanyahu was back in office. However, they weren't, this was sometime in December, but they were not able to actually start working, meaning the new government, until January 15th. So they had a big waiting period of, hey, we have a new government, let's get the ball rolling. Well, if they don't have anyone there working and being able to communicate with, then they can't do anything. So and that requires them to submit the license and also meet the new people and develop relationships and things of that nature. So the new government is definitely more pro fossil fuel, and they said that they do not have any new license yet. However, they feel confident that in Q3 is when they'll get their approval. And then, of course, on the back end, thanks to shareholders for their loyal and steadfast contributions. He did mention that one of the main and first objectives that they had, meeting the new government, was their license that they applied for. Whenever they came into office, that was one of the top things that was waiting for them to kind of look at. And so, they're pretty optimistic that they're going to get that done, and they think it's going to get done in sometime in Q3, which is still a little bit a time away from now, but not too far off. And then next up, we had a review of the last quarter, which is from CFO Michael Croswell. This is something, I don't know if I heard this correctly. I could be very wrong on this. So if someone goes back and listens, or you did listen, please correct me in the comments, because I'm not 100% sure, because the audio was kind of in and out. Like I said, it sounded like he said $2.2 million of cash in the bank. I would assume that there's more than that due to the operational costs. However, I'm not sure that may be accurate, because they said they have enough money to operate basically through August. Okay, now it's cool that they have enough money to operate through August. However, it's also a little concerning because August is not that far off. You have June, you have July, and you have August. And we're almost already half through June. So you're looking at about 2.5 months of operational cash. But they did mention that they have a lot of warrants in their new unit program that they're confident they're going to raise some more money through, and that they have money coming in on a daily basis through contributions through not only the unit program, just people that's directly investing through Zion itself. And then he discussed the weekly prayer groups and prayer line that they have through Zion Oil and Gas. Okay, guys, before we go on to the next section, again, this took a lot of time for me to gather all the information, so don't forget to like the video, share the video. If you really feel thankful, you can go click here, hit the super thanks, give a donation to the channel. Worst case, just subscribe, like, share. That does us plenty. So, okay, back to the video. We then went on, guys, to the Q&A session, and a lot of the questions were probably repetitive from people. That's why they didn't probably answer every single person's. That's typical. This is the third one that I've been through with the company, and they make sure and mention that. So the first question I was asked was, what is the new technology that you're talking about, and has it been tested with and backed by data, or are you just kind of grabbing something and putting it out there just because it's new? Dunn answered this and said, or not Dunn, there's another, I forgot which person answered this, but he did say that five years ago they did not have the technology that they do now, and this technology has been tested and data shows that it could help their current situation. They use this type of technology throughout all different types of heated wells throughout the United States, and they feel pretty confident that this is going to help them as well. So it's not something that's like in the beta testing stages or anything like that. It's something that's been proven throughout other companies, that's been used on a consistent basis. So that's a good thing there. Someone asked, is fracking an option for the MJ01? That was a hot topic, of course. Once the MJ2 is deemed not commercially viable, people started going crazy, like, why don't you just frack the dang thing? And they didn't really answer that as far as if it's an option or not. Dunn just basically said that it's an educational process, and then for obvious reasons with fracking, with the environmental concerns that the government may have, he just kind of mentioned that I think that they'll have to just kind of educate the new government on what they could do in order to get the well to flow. And then he didn't say fracking was off the table, he just didn't say that it was going to be currently allowed on the MJ1 well. Someone then asked the 7-year exploration license question, meaning this 7-year exploration license that you're applying for, is it a full 7 years, or is it kind of broken up like we've seen in the past of you have an extension, then all of a sudden you have to reapply, and then boom, they're granted a new extension. They broke it down in a sense of basically a 7-year exploration license is basically formatted as follows. If you get approved, you get a 3-year exploration license, and then you have the option to renew a 1-year term 4 times. So that's 7 total years that you're eligible for. So basically, if they get approved, they're going to have a 3-year period where they're not going to have to apply for an extension. And then after that 3 years, if they still haven't gotten the job done, they'll reapply, get a year extension, reapply. So they can do it up to 7 years in that particular format. Q&A session continued. The next question was, upon approval of the license, will you begin working immediately, or will it carry over into 2024 and we'll have to continue to wait? Dunn seemed pretty confident that due to the fact that they have all the equipment on site now, they own the rig, they don't have to wait on the rig to come overseas and all this type of stuff, that he feels pretty confident that everything should be in place to begin working fairly quickly and kind of get the ball rolling. He doesn't see operations waiting until 2024. However, you never can quite tell if that's going to be a thing or not. It's always a possibility that they can see delays for whatever reason, so don't hold your breath on that, but they seem pretty optimistic that they'll get started right away. Any specific flow rate that you're looking for? Dunn didn't want to speculate, didn't really give an answer to that question. Are you creating a larger diameter for the MJ1? No, they are not. They're going to basically go in, check the cement casings, they're going to do some wireline testing, etc. And he stated that this should be a quick in and out process. So fingers crossed on that. That would be nice to know something this year on what they have in that particular well. Okay. Question: if the MJ01 is deemed commercially viable, then what? Well, basically what's going to happen, and I think a lot of people already know this, but they re-emphasized that they're going to file for a 30-year production license through Israel, and then the company is now an E&P company, which is not just exploration, but exploration and production company. All right, guys, so my overall thoughts on the annual shareholder meeting, I thought that this was very, very informative in my opinion. I found that they were a lot more positive this year than last. I think last year when they came to the table, you can tell that a lot of people didn't want to be there because they knew it was not what people were expecting, and they knew they had to come out and present this information, but you can tell they didn't want to because they knew that the result was not going to be good, for the morale and overall share price for the company. It seemed that the stock halted. I don't know if this is a thing or not, or if it's just me, like kind of noticing this, but at 10:30, whenever they announced there was no license extension yet, I went and checked the price, and I even pulled up the chart on the 1 minute, 1 day, 1 minute, and it was just sitting there. It sat there for a good 15, 20 minutes and did nothing. Okay, I thought that was kind of strange because it started to slow down, like slowly come down, and then nothing happened for quite some time, and then eventually fell down like closer to 11 o'clock. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I don't know if anyone noticed that John Brown talked, and then once he talked, he just kind of peaced out and left and went to another room. They made sure and mentioned in the chat that he was in another boardroom with some other people from the Dallas office. So that's why he didn't stay. I thought he was still in there. There was a guy to the left that actually looked like him, but apparently he got up and left after he spoke. This kind of seemed like deja vu from past experiences. It was a little bit more positive for me, if I'm being honest. Like listening to it as a shareholder, I kind of feel a little bit more optimistic. However, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I have that sick feeling in my stomach of like, oh gosh, here we go again type thing. So we'll have to kind of see. I hope they prove me wrong for sure, but we'll have to kind of wait and see how it plays out. The stock price and will I buy more? So my thoughts on the stock price, which we're about to take a look at the charts and see what the market's telling us and see what the support and resistance levels are. The only way I come in and buy more is if it falls to about 4.5 cents and just kind of settles. That I might come back in and lower my average price pretty significantly at those levels, but I'm not buying unless it falls to the very bottom right there, and then we kind of just sit there and wait. So let's take a look at the charts, guys, and let's see what they're telling us. All right, guys, taking a look at ZNOG gas, ticker symbol ZNOG. So you see here that the fib level did currently update now. 20 cents is your absolute overall tip top. I do think that's actually going to go lower, and we're going to eventually get to about 15 cents, which makes me think that for sure we're going to go down to 4.5 cents and possibly lower than that. So that's why I'm eyeing this and just kind of keeping an eye on. I'm not pulling the trigger just yet on buying anything here, because off of good news it could obviously roll up to 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, and but it has to come with some type of good news, or at least speculative good news, as we've seen in the past. So currently, we did break below that about 8 cent mark, and we're currently at a little under 6.5 cents, and we are undervalued on the RSI, obviously in a bearish pattern on the MACD. However, we're just kind of sitting in the middle of the support and resistance level. I do think even if we get a little spike up to about 7 cents, I think we're going to pull down, and I think 4.5 cents is going to be where we eventually settle out at, and just kind of wait and kind of be stagnant from there and just kind of see what happens. So anyway, guys, thanks for hanging in with me for this longer than normal video. Hope that it covered most of all the key points for the annual shareholder meeting. Hope you got something out of it. Let me know your comments below. Other than that, we will catch you in the next one.